Hey, City Church, with me here, I've got Mark Miller. He is our worship pastor candidate. I and the other elders, Ryan and Evan, we're super passionate about this guy. We think he's phenomenal. He was able to come down today and lead worship with us today. If you haven't had a chance to see the live stream, we recommend that you go to our Facebook page and check out the service, or even rewatch it if you were here, just to see how we were shepherded through worship this morning. God has completely gifted Mark tremendously musically, as well as his ability to lead us in worship. And we're so very grateful for you to come down today. And I was definitely blessed by your leading in worship this morning. What we're doing today is we're going to be interviewing Mark. We got about 5 questions for him. And really this interview is about giving you guys an opportunity to get to know Mark a little bit better. If we were to hire him and bring him on to the staff team, he's immediately eligible to become an elder because we are looking to fill a pastoral position. And so what that means is if in order for him to become an elder, the membership within the Seed Church has to vote him on. That's the way our bylaws are written. So this is an opportunity, knowing he wasn't able to meet everybody at church today. He's not in town, so he's not necessarily able to be here very often. So this is an opportunity for us to get to know Mark a little bit better, have you guys get to know him a little better, to help you guys make an informed decision if it comes to that. So keep an eye on your weekly email for more announcements regarding Mark, as well as potential voting on him. And if you have any specific questions about like what this process is going to look like, you can contact Evan, Ryan, or I. We would be happy to answer more questions for you, not only about Mark, but also what our bylaws look like, why it takes the membership to bring him on, or even how the voting process will be working. If you're not a member, this would be a fantastic opportunity to start asking questions about membership. Not that we only want you to be a member so that you can be part of the decision making, but it's just a great opportunity to be invested in a local church. So talk to Ryan, Evan, or I if you have more questions. But Mark, we got a few questions for you. First of all, thanks for coming down today.
Yeah.
It was worship was phenomenal. We had about like 90 people here.
Cool.
Upstairs anyway. We had probably 50 kids downstairs, but I was surely blessed by it. I know the band loved having you lead them. Talked to a few of them after service, and they really, really loved it.
Well, praise the Lord. Thank you. I'm very blessed to be here. So
awesome. So like I said, we got about 5 questions for you. Just to get to know you more, get to know about what the Lord has done in your life, how He brought you to where we are right now, even sitting on this stage. And yeah, we'll just open the floor with these questions. Let me get my paper here so I remember what I'm asking. The first one is how did God lead you toward pursuing pastoral ministry here at the Seed?
Yeah, so I think back in toward the beginning of September is when it was. My brother-in-law Ryan, who I have known for a long time, he reached out to me, and we have both been doing ministry for a while. I've been doing worship ministry for a while, and he said that the Seed was looking to put together a worship pastor, possibly role. And so he said that the elders and he had asked that, or he wanted to reach out to me to see if I would come down and maybe chat with you guys to kind of flesh out what a worship pastor role would look like. And I think in the process of that, what happened is that even though after we had a chance to really talk about it and kind of see maybe the culture of the church, it was at that point that I think we started, it was asked to me that I kind of consider, would I be prayerful about possibly applying for the position. And so even though at the time I wasn't necessarily looking for a change, I did want to be faithful to God possibly opening up a door. And so started praying about it and kind of seeing if God was, if he was leading in this capacity for me to apply. And I think after praying about it for a while and really seeking the Lord, that I felt like this was God opening up a door for me to at least apply and to pursue the position here. So,
Great. Yeah. I just remember Ryan talking about how he wanted to talk to you. It was great that he had that connection to say, other folks that he had talked to had said, it's hard to just throw out, a blanket, job application out there. You kind of have to be intentional. And so we didn't necessarily want to start from scratch. So it was great that we had the connection to even just ask you, like, I remember sitting in this back room here being like, Mark, like, what are we even looking for? What do we even do with this? Can you help us in this? And I think we're all a little surprised at how the Lord was moving, where we got to know you a little bit more, and we're like, wow, we really like this guy. What do you think the chances are he would want to come to Wichita? And so, thank you so much for heeding the Spirit's moving. I think that speaks a lot to your character of just even being open to that idea. Nobody likes change, and to invite an opportunity is huge. It'd be very easy to be like, not going anywhere. So definitely not something that doesn't need courage. So.
And I think too, something that stuck out, or something that I think is worth mentioning as well, is that for a while I feel like I've been able to kind of watch the seed from a distance, because Ryan and I have been such dear friends, and every time Ryan and I would get together, it seems like I was always anxious to hear how the seed was growing and how the seed was doing, and so it's always kind of been. In I guess in my prayers. The church has always kind of been in my prayers as well, because I've loved to see how the church has grown, just through what Ryan has shared with me, and just the excitement of what God's doing here.
Awesome. Well, that's super cool. So, next question we have for you is just simply tell us about your family.
Yeah, so in 2005, I married Amy Davison. She became my wife, Amy Miller, and we had both met at college. We met in the theater department. We both were studying theater, and that was kind of our aim. That was what we wanted to do with our careers, is that we wanted to do theater. So we graduated from Southwest Baptist University. Was married in 2005, moved to the Kansas City area to kind of get into the theater district up there, and very quickly found ourselves pregnant with our first child, Jonah. And so it was at that moment that I was like, okay, even though we had a call back and stuff like that, and we were kind of optimistic about what theater would look like for us, it was at that moment, whenever we found ourselves pregnant with our first child, that I was like, hey, I'm probably going to have to get a real job. So, or get something that's a little bit more substantial. And so got a job through a temp agency that ended up turning into something more permanent. But we had Jonah, and after we had Jonah, 2 years later, we had Melanie. And even 2 years later after that, we had Autumn. So, and they are all of the age of 14, 12, and 10 right now. So we have a teenager boy that's getting ready this next fall to enter into high school. Melanie is getting ready to enter into junior high, and Autumn will be still be in grade school. But it'll be the first time that all three of them will be in a different school. But we're kind of excited to see what this we knew it was going to be a new season regardless of whether or not where God would end up taking us. But we're anxious to see just what this new season looks like, and just continue to prayerfully ask God, how do you want us to disciple our kids? Just seeking that out as to what that looks like in our current family context. So
yeah, no, that's great. Got to hang out with them a little bit today. They seem like fantastic kids, super outgoing. I mean, we kind of got introduced to them, and they're like waving and saying hi, and no, they seem like great kids. Hopefully, they could actually be in school buildings.
Yeah, we're hopeful too.
For real. So, next question we have for you is, when did you become a Christian, and how did the Lord pursue you?
Yeah, so I guess. Not to sound cliche or anything, but I grew up in a home that was religious, that was a Christian home. We went to church, and so I always had that influence in my life through my parents and through those that were in our church congregation. And but it wasn't until between my 7th and 8th grade year that I went to a summer camp a youth summer camp, and it was at that moment that through the preaching of the word and just the Lord's leading, that I felt like He revealed Himself to me in a way that I had never experienced before. I felt the Holy Spirit convicting me of my sin, and it was at that moment, that summer, that I decided, okay, God, I was kind of naive, but I went into it going, God, I don't know what this means, but I want to be a part of it. So I guess you could say at that point is I surrendered to whatever He had in store, not really knowing what that was going to look like. So from that point forward, it was interesting because through my high school and my college years, God continued to put me in situations that was growing me in terms of my relationship with Him, but also was preparing me for the ministry that He was going to call me to. I found myself a part of worship bands very early on in our youth group, and it continued to, like I said, as I went to college, opportunities kept on presenting themselves, and so I feel like in those situations, not only was God continually pursuing me and calling me into Himself, but was also preparing me for the ministry that He was going to set aside for me to do as I grew into that. So, and up to this day, he's still pursuing me. He's still drawing me close to Him and maturing me. So, I'm thinking, does that answer your question?
Yeah, something, and this is pulling back from conversations that we've had in the past, but this, when you were talking about it with the elders and I remember what time it was, but something that really stood out to me is how God even used your passion for theater and wanting to do that to almost like flip it on its head of like, well, you're going to be on stage, but not be playing a character. Can you speak into that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so that was something that was very interesting to me, is that when I felt called to ministry, so really quickly after I graduated from college with a degree in theater, so I was studying how to put a character on and how to get on a stage and tell a story through a character. So I graduated with that degree. Amy and I got married, and very quickly I felt called to the ministry. And so it was a struggle for me at first, because I kept on thinking, God, why would you call someone to a very authentic calling to where I'm going to stand up in front of people and I need to be authentic whenever I've spent all these years learning how to put on a character? But it was very interesting to me because even through my theater education, I believe God was really helping me understand how art, or how music, and how Christianity, art and culture kind of go together. And so I felt like all that God was using so that whenever I did start my ministry, that I was being very intentional about making sure that when I stepped on the platform, that I wasn't defaulting to a character, even defaulting to a pastoral or worship leader character, but stepping on the platform, being authentic, because I felt like that was what was of utmost importance. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, especially in a very Christian culture part of the country where it's just easy at times to just go to church on Sunday and play the part and then go out in the rest of the world and be a completely different person. It's very easy to do that. I feel like, Christians always at times just even struggle with the authenticity part of like not just showing up and putting on the face. And that's definitely something we're passionate here at the Seed, as I know that you've seen, of just having just that intense vulnerability of just authentic people. And so really championing that. So thanks for delving into that.
Yeah.
Next question I have for you is, why are you passionate about pastoring the church through worship ministry?
Yeah. So let me put it like this. So whenever, like back when I first felt called, there was a lot of sorting through of what my calling was that I needed to do in the very beginning. And so I sought out a worship leader mentor and just asked him if he would kind of mentor me. And very early on, I don't know if it was through his guidance or what it was, but I felt like he was presented a question to me, the difference between if I felt called to be a worship leader or I felt called to be a worship pastor. And so I think I had to start wrestling with what is a pastor.
Right. What's the difference?
Yeah, what's a pastor? What's a worship pastor? And what's a worship leader? And then once I was able to define that, then say, okay, now what do I honestly feel like God is calling me to? And so through prayer and seeking it out, I really feel like what the Lord has led me to is that a pastor is a shepherd. A pastor is someone who is leading not only on the platform but off the platform. Someone that's meeting people and longing to not just lead them in a corporate worship on a Sunday morning, but also continually striving to lead them even in their own private worship as just believers of God. And so, what I felt led to pursue pastoral ministry through worship is that I felt like God was laying on my heart that I don't want to just get up and play songs for people, but I legitimately want to lead them and shepherd them. And then even here recently, I feel like the word discipleship has really been tied into that. And so for me, discipleship and worship, in the very beginning, was hard for me to reconcile how they went together. But I feel like as I've been praying through this and I've been seeking the Lord in this, I feel like discipleship, which is what we all want to be disciples of Christ that make disciples, is that for us to be disciples that make disciples, we have to be fervent disciples. We have to be disciples that are passionate about Christ, that worship Christ, that praise Christ, because otherwise there's no way that we can make disciples for something that we're not even passionate or fervent about.
Right. For sure. Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail right on the head with that of, number one, we're called to be disciples of Christ, not just somebody who just does what he says. Like there's a difference between somebody who's a disciple versus somebody who just, I wouldn't say follow somebody, but you know what I mean. And worship is a big key to that of like, we worship so many things. Like really, if you think about it, we're disciples of so many things in this world. We would just never call ourselves disciples of it. But you often find like, I really see what you're saying there. Like worship so intimately ties in with the word disciple, because like if you're going to commit yourself to being a disciple of something, like you are pretty much worshiping that. And worship can really form that because of what, at least even worship through song, of like praising him and reminding ourselves of who he is and what he's done, can really aid in our discipleship of growing to be more like Christ.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so our last question is, what are some of the scriptures that have shaped your convictions about worship ministry?
Yeah, so in terms of worship ministry, I mean, like it's hard. It's hard because there's a lot of scripture that I find myself whenever whether it's in my personal time or whether it's in studying for something else, but I always feel like there's always something that ties back to how it relates to worship ministry. But I think some that have stuck out to me, some that I always kind of go to, is there's the scripture in John 4 where we see the interaction that Jesus has with the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman at the well. And she is coming before him, and she's asking him about corporate worship. She's asking him about, your people say that we need to worship here. Our people say we worship here. What do you say? And kind of tries to put Jesus in a rough spot. But what Jesus says is he tells her, he says, the time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And Jesus takes the whole conversation and kind of flips it on its head. And so that for me has always been crucial in terms of worship ministry, or what has shaped worship ministry, is because corporate worship ministry needs to be some sort of a reflection of the personal worship that we have with Christ, or that we give to Christ. And so worship ministry to me has to have the aim of leading people in worshiping in spirit and in truth. So often I think we can get caught up in the logistics of it, kind of like the Samaritan woman did. She was talking about locations, but I think for today's modern church, we can get mixed up in styles of music. We can get mixed up in expressiveness and how that looks within a church. And I feel like worship ministry is something that's always helped me kind of come back to how my views of corporate worship are formed, is this sense that we need to aim for worshiping in spirit and in truth. And I think, some of this same thought is echoed in the letters. And I appreciate Paul and his letter to the Ephesians and to Colossians on two different accounts where he's given in his letters where he's talking about how we need to encourage one another with hymns, psalms, and spiritual songs. And so even in that, I feel like Paul, what he is doing, and something that I've always kind of gleaned from that, is that Paul's not trying to say, hey, you need to make sure that your worship services have every style of music or every style of music that's in it. But what Paul is doing is he's coming back to making sure that everything's happening in spirit and in truth. And I think very quickly, if I could just say, hymns were these things. They weren't, from a hymnal. Hymns were these things where they were songs that what made them a hymn was that they were songs that were sung to someone. Psalms were songs that were based in truth. And then spiritual songs were songs that came from deep within us. So you see, even in that Paul is saying that that true worshipers worship the Father, hymns, songs for someone, in spirit, spiritual songs, and in truth, which is our psalms. So those are kind of some scriptures that have always continued to draw me back to worship ministry. But like I said, there's so many more. Like every time you get to a psalm that says, from one generation will declare your goodness to another generation, you're just like, well, there you go. Right. There you see generational, how it's important to have it in worship.
Something I wanted to tie with your answer there, which was awesome. Even learned something there about the difference between, like, I grew up in Christian school, and so like you hear so many scriptures so often that, like, I really love it when I hear it in a way like I didn't know that about those what the differentiation of those three. But something I wanted to just point out and say, tying into your answer, was something you did even during service today at the after communion. One, we were all kind of seated, and you were going to be leading us through what could be a new song to some people. And so sometimes it's easier, like, okay, it's more like maybe less participatory, so don't feel like you have to stand. But you even said something to the effect of, like, I invite you to worship, but sing if you feel you want to. That's not exactly what you said, but like almost like giving people the permission to realize, like, worship isn't necessarily you're singing along with the song. If anything, I've got a good friend of mine in the church, and something he said recently is oftentimes he actually doesn't sing during worship, not because he doesn't think he has a good voice or anything like that, but because, like, that's his time to quiet his heart and, like, meditate on what the song is, and he's worshiping more in his spirit than focusing on the actual act of singing. So I feel like that ties in really well, and something I really appreciated, just how you answer that question with something you actually practiced here in service of, like, worship, even in a corporate sense, is yes, we do sing, and we sing corporately, and we are kind of a spiritual choir, but at the same time, you can sit in your seat and you can just meditate and worship in spirit and not even open your mouth. Yeah. And that is all still worship.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, kind of another way of looking at it is that, my hope is that whenever I lead worship, that we sing, that we corporately sing together, but not at the expense of setting aside worshiping in spirit and in truth. And so, yeah, that's I'm glad that's being seen, because that is my heart, is that first and foremost, my heart is to lead people in worshiping in spirit and truth. And from the overflow of that worshiping in spirit and truth, may we praise and sing. Yeah, so
for sure. Well, those are the only questions I really had for you. Was there anything that you feel you'd like to add? Personal anecdote? Sports prediction?
No. Wouldn't dare go there. No, I think, like I said earlier, my heart is just that has been what's always been since God's called me, is that I feel very much just wanting to serve and wanting to lead by leading people in worshiping Jesus, and therefore creating disciples that lead other disciples in worshiping Jesus as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for being willing to do this. Really appreciate you taking more time away from your family. And I hope you have a fantastic afternoon with them. I bet you're on the road this afternoon yet, getting back up to KC.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to stick around. We might stick around and see how the Chiefs do.
Gotcha. Well, no sports predictions, but you heard it here. I didn't wear my Broncos masks, but that's a different story. He can disciple for me later, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, church family, again, the purpose of this, and we really hope this was helpful for you to hear a little bit more from Mark. We are going to be having him write kind of a short little bio, so you might be getting some of this information again, kind of more in written form, but we felt it was going to be very helpful and just even a different environment to hear from Mark himself, get some personality, get some in-person action in a virtual world that we're living in today. But just really felt that it was going to be an awesome opportunity to ask some of these things in person and get to hear from Mark and kind of know his heart a little bit more on a personal level. Again, look for this in your weekly email. We're going to be sending it out. I guess you're going to be watching it, and this isn't live right now, but we're going to be sending this out in the weekly email. We'll keep you guys notified as to any announcements we have regarding Mark in this position. It's not decided yet. This was just one of the, obviously if he's going to be a potential worship pastor for us, we wanted to experience him here at the Seed as well as you experience the Seed yourself, as we both come together to see where the Lord is leading regarding hiring of this position. So if that comes to fruition, church family, we will be announcing it to you and we letting you know the next steps regarding voting, regarding eldership, and all of that. So again, Mark, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Family, we love you and we hope you have a great day.
Adios.